Well, thank you.
Hello.
And hello, everybody. It's so good to see a bunch of, we did this last year and there weren't as many people in person, so it's so nice to see everybody. And hello to everybody back home in Zoom. But my husband, I really wanted him to be here. He's going to be at the March 3rd one, but we have 6 kids, so it's not 9. But we have 6 kids, and all of our kids are, and we all use natural family planning, and we spaced our kids each 3 years apart. So we used it. We are living proof that you can space them out. You can, work with God on his plan. And I mean, we were open to life the whole time, but this is the way it happened for us. But it was awesome. But it was funny. I sent it to Dan. I don't know if you looked at that, Dan. This was from Focus on the Family, is a great website for families. You should write it down, Focus on the Family. They're a Christian organization. They are just champions for life. But anyways, they give, every couple days, they give a lot of information on news medias and things like this. So this is interesting. And I want both you men and women to listen to this. Modern motherhood has a major PR problem. Okay. Motherhood has a major PR problem. Every time we've announced a pregnancy, this is the person writing it, and we've done it like 5 times now, married or coupled friends of my age will often reply in a somewhat strange manner. They'll congratulate me and they'll go into detail about why they haven't yet had any kids. They usually have some variation of the following explanation. I don't feel ready to just walk away from my life. And there's so much else I want to do, so much more I want to accomplish before I put a stop to my life. It's fairly insulting, though, but I've never told them. The implication is that 8 years ago, when I had my first child, I stopped living my life. I stopped accomplishing anything. I am now in a static state of being, living only for my children and not for myself. How do we push back against this perception of being a parent and motherhood and fatherhood? Well, it starts with you and me. My husband taught my kids a Bing Crosby song. You should be singing this one too, Dan. While there was so much whining and arguing going on in the back seat. And the lyrics go like this: Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do? Just when everything looked so dark. Man, they said, we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch onto the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In-Between. And here's the secret. Talking about the joys of parenthood isn't just some slick spin to get people to produce more human capital. No, it's the truth. There is no higher joy. There is no greater euphoria. There is no more thrilling or exalted accomplishment than bringing a unique soul, all their own, into the world and orientating them toward a life of virtue. So there's a contagion quality to how we depict life with children. And it sets a tone that influences whether our next generation, which is you guys, continues this great unbroken chain. We must communicate this reality when we talk about parenthood, both online and in person. Parenthood is sublime. It is the greatest and most transcendental of human achievements. This isn't sugarcoating. This isn't hyperbole. It's just truth-telling, and we need more of it. Did you find the song?
Yeah.
Well, just hear a little bit of it. We need a speaker.
1940s.
Accent, Mr. In-Between. You got to spread joy up to the maximum. Bring gloom down to the minimum. Have faith or pandemonium, liable to walk upon the scene.
To illustrate his last remark, Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do just when everything looked so dark?
Man, they said we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In-Between.
So, good stuff. But anyway, so I kind of wanted to start with that because the joys of parenthood are awesome. And has my life stopped? No, it's gotten better. I've gotten the ability to get to coach my kids, run things for the church, and I also work. And I work part-time, and one of the things I do, I'm a home physical therapist. And I have to tell you something, every single old person that I have ever taken care of, I always ask them this one question: besides maybe getting their favorite recipe, okay? But the question I said is, do you wish you had more kids? And every single one of them, guess what they said? Yeah, I wish I did. And it's too late by then, right? But you don't realize how lovely kids are sometimes until you're old enough when they're the ones that are coming around and they're the family that you're visiting with and they're the ones helping take care of you. So I don't ever forget that, all right? So I'm gonna pass around a picture of my family. This was last year's Christmas card. My oldest daughter, Sarah, with her boyfriend, or her husband, let's try to pick him out. He's the blondie next to her. But they got married October 23rd. So I've been through a wedding myself and we had an absolute blast. We had about 100 people there. And it was a great experience. We couldn't invite everybody, so we had a pig roast the next day. And we invited all of our neighbors, and it was a great, great experience. So, but the thing was all those neighbors at the pig roast, I invited them to the church. So our church was packed, so which was awesome, because that's the best part, right? So if Jack was here, we would start with saying, like, our PreCana wasn't good. It was 2 days. It was awful. It was not very good. And I really want you to know how important this is for you. It's about inspiring how marriages work. The psychologist, I'm sure he talked about the communication and the importance of it. It's getting to know your partner intimately. And it gives you a chance and an opportunity to see why your partner is the way they are, how they were raised. It gives you a chance to stop and listen and ask questions before you say, I do. So now is the time to ask your questions. Now is the time to say, hey, have you talked about kids? Have you decided, where you'd like to live, what you'd like to do? What is your life going to look like in 5 years? It's good to dream and to talk about these things. And it's also really good to learn how your partner was raised and how their parents' marriage worked. So many marriages end in divorce these days. A lot of you might not have had good marriages to look up to. And Jack and I saw different ways to deal with conflict in our own parents. My parents, I never saw them argue, ever. They must have gone behind a door. I never saw them argue. So that was kind of hard for me, because when Jack and I would argue, I thought, oh my God, we don't have a good marriage, because I never saw my parents argue. But that wasn't good. Kids need to see you learn to disagree and how to resolve it, how to say, I'm sorry for doing this, and how can I make it up to you? And his mom and dad, they argued all the time. And the way they would solve it is they wouldn't talk to each other for a week. They would sleep in separate beds. I mean, we didn't have good marriages to look up to. So you need to talk about that and say, how are we going to handle conflict? We're not going to go to bed angry. So I know you like to run away, and we shouldn't run away. We should come together and decide, but how are we going to work this out? So that's really important. So a lot of you might not be good communicators, but you got to get good at communicating and letting each other know. So I just want you, we're so blessed. If Jack was here, he'd say he's so blessed to share with you that, I am more in love with him now than I was when I first married him. And I think it's because you share so many things. You share kids, you share experiences, you share good, you share bad. But the really important thing is that we are all created by God. We have unique, special gifts, and we're created to use our gifts. And take those gifts and serve others. And marriage is one very important way that you're going to take all the gifts that you have and you're going to serve that other people. I mean, the most important job as a wife is for me to help bring my husband to heaven, to give him holiness, to help him be a better man. And his greatest effort should be to bring me closer to God and to bring me closer to holiness. And so your spouse, and ultimately you're going to serve your family and serve your children. And so God has a plan for each of your lives. I'm going to tell you a story, but I just want you to know that God's plan right now, like he's looking down on you, and his plan for your marriage and your life and how many kids you're going to have are way better than anything you could ever imagine, anything you can ever imagine. He wants to bestow on each one of your marriages so much joy and so much love. And God has providence, and I just want you to know, if you could write a book, like if I could write a book now, I would be like, oh my God, there was God's footprints in every single thing we did. So I just want to tell you a quick story. Jack and I met at Marquette University. He was studying civil engineering. I was studying physical therapy. I'm a morning person. He's a night person. But guess what? If you're in therapy or engineering, you're up at 8 a.m. You're going to class because you got labs to do on top of all your other things. So we're walking. I'd be on this side of the street. He'd be on this side of the street. I'd be like, hey, Jack, how you doing? He'd be wearing his baseball cap like, oh my God, does this girl ever shut up? You know, and he didn't, you know, and now we're waking up every morning to me, right? But that's how we got to know each other and we became friends. And so I met him there and he was graduating as a civil engineer. We were engaged. We were getting married in December. This was the summer before we were going to get married. And he said, Cathy, would you mind if I take the fireman's test? And I'm thinking to myself, because my plan was you're going to be a civil engineer. You're going to wear a white collar, tie. You're taking the Stone Street station. You're going to work downtown. You're going to be my engineer. This is, you know, we're going to live in LaGrange with a white picket fence in a Victorian home. I mean, I had it all picked out, right? Don't we do that, girls? You know, we like to think about that. And I said to him, well, Jack, you know, I'd say, Jack, how many other people are taking this? And he's like, oh, like 40,000. So I pat him on the back. I say, follow your dreams, honey. Follow them, you know, thinking he's never going to get picked. Guess what? He was in the first class. So we were living in LaGrange Park. We had 9 days to move into the city. Literally, we had to pay someone to move out of an apartment so we could move in. And they actually, in the academy, they actually asked him to show him their apartment and show him where he kept his towels. So it was good that we did move into the city because he could have lost his job the first month out. But so God had a plan, and this was the beauty of it. Even though we had still finished paying off his school loans for civil engineering, God knew that he would use that sometime in his life. And the beautiful thing of it is that because he was a fireman, he worked 1 day on, 2 days off, right? Smart guy, 1 day on, 2 days off. So he would be home with the kids. And then I got to go to work a couple days. I got to visit with patients and share my gifts and my talents. But it was kind of neat because there was always one of us home. I never had to pay for childcare. And he got an awesome opportunity of being able to take the kids to the park, you know, play with them, wrestle with them, do that really fun stuff. So, oh my God, was God's plans better than my plan? Absolutely. And it worked out so, so great. And the funny thing was, is about maybe 8 years ago, they needed somebody in the bureau of the fire department to do code compliance. And so he's a civil engineer, right? He reads plans. He's also a professional engineer. So they hired him. So now he's working for the fire department using a civil engineering degree as a chief to make sure that all of the updates are code compliant so firemen won't get hurt. So isn't it neat that, you know, my plans was not as good as that. And, you know, culture tells us one way about love and sex as well. You know, culture says you should do this and this is how it should be and you need this much money and you need to have this much money before you have your first kid. And are you ever ready to have your first kid? I mean, no, you're never ready. It's just a roller coaster. You just go with it and you just do the best you can. It's the culture tells us that sex and everything is about instant gratification. It's about what you see on Netflix. It's what you see on Hallmark. But you need to understand the beautiful way that the Catholic Church, and I think Father John? He probably went over about how, I think you guys really need to understand it. A lot of Catholics today, they pick and choose what they want to believe in the Catholic Church. They say, yeah, I really love that part. I love the social justice part of this, but I don't love the contraception part of this, and I don't like that part of it. But I'm going to pick and choose because I can. But what I want you to know is that our church is so awesome that they've invested so much time and energy to protect all of us and give us the best version of ourselves, the best marriage we could have by giving us what we consider rules. They're not rules. They're actually safety for us. And they put a hedge around our families and they protect us. So, you know, we think that the church is trying to give us rules, but the rules are going to help your marriage grow and flourish. So families, and ultimately your families, are going to be the backbone of our society. And keeping marriages and families strong, especially in today's where they're trying to, you know, not entice marriage and not entice having a large family. Keeping our marriages and families strong is paramount to the mission of our faith. So one other thing I want to do before I go into the slideshow presentation about what natural family planning is I'm going to tell you a little bit about contraception. But before I go into this, another part of a really cool story that I had with my oldest daughter, Sarah, who just got married. She was 9 years old and I was pregnant with my third baby. And she was 9 years old and she said, Mom, could I come and watch, you know, the baby being born? Because we didn't know what any of our kids were, boys or girls. We never found out for any of them. my friend said, Cathy, why are you doing that? I said, I didn't ask her. She wanted to. So we're open. We're going to do this. So she came to that birth and she was sitting at the top of the bed and the mirror was down there. Okay. And I was going through labor and she left the room and my doctor said, Cathy, I think it was too much for her. And I said, yeah, I don't think so. She went out and got a step stool and she told the doctor, I can't see a darn thing. And so she went and sat right down there and saw everything. The doctor let her cut the cord and then the nurse let her bathe the baby. And it was just the neatest thing. I mean, she was only 9 years old. So picture the bed with my 9-year-old daughter and the newborn baby and me, and we all were doing this together. So the next baby comes around. Now she's 13. Mom, can I see this baby being born? Sure. So then she came, same thing, beautiful. Then Maria, I was pregnant with my 6th baby and now she's 16. And she says, Mom, this is it, but I want to do more. I'm like, so she knows my doctor. She says, Dr. Hubka, I want to do more. She goes, okay, put some scrubs on. She let Sarah deliver the baby. So she guided her and she delivered the baby. Sarah's crying. I let Sarah name her sister because she had 4 brothers at this point. And so she named her Maria Kathleen Mullen. And initially we were going to call her Mary Kate. We thought it was kind of an athletic name, we could do that. But then we ended up just keeping her Maria. And she was crying and she goes, I know what I want to do the rest of my life. And now she's a midwife. So I just want you to know, like, if I didn't have my 6th kid, if I didn't do that, if I didn't let those things happen in my life, I mean, God had her in mind to help her pick her career. So I just want you to know how awesome your life is going to be. And I just want you to look forward to your family because it's awesome. So the main thing Jack would be saying, this is his part here, is Jack would come out and he would tell you, when you use contraception, you're saying to your wife, so he'd be pointing to me, I'd be saying to my wife that I want you, but I don't want all of you. I want you, but I don't want your fertility, which is, by the way, it's not a disease. I don't know if you've heard about it, but fertility is actually the 5th sign of health. You got blood pressure, you got heart rate, you got oxygen saturation, you got your temperature, and then you got your fertility, women. And fertility tells you if you're healthy. So it's not a disease. It's something that you want. You want your fertility. Fertility is a healthy part of our function as a total woman. You're also telling God that, you know what, I love you, God. I'll go to church on Sundays. I'll pray, but I don't want you to be part of this decision. After all, I know you're creator of life, but you're actually saying to God, you're not welcome in this part of our marriage. And see, God wants to work with you as you develop your family because he knows what's best for you. He knows when the good time is. He knows how many children you should have. He knows your heart. He knows what your desires are. So, and that's a beautiful thing. Again, I want to say that when you contracept, you're saying that you can have me, but not this part of me. God, I want your wisdom. I want your influence. I want your guidance in everything in our marriage, but not that. So you're really losing a unit of purpose. And instead you're using the person for their own needs or for your own needs. Contraception will have implications in your spiritual life as well. God created sex. He's the author of it. He gave it for both pleasure and to create new life. God has given us the knowledge that I'm going to share with you tonight on how you can space your children and you can have God work through you without contracepting. So you can do it naturally. And I just want to tell you some quick things, and I don't know if Father John talked about it or if Dan will talk about it, but I just want you to know a little bit about contraception. The pill. It's actually considered by the World Health Organization to be a level 1 carcinogen. And the earlier that you go on the pill, the greater chance you have of getting breast cancer, women. So this is like a new research that they're coming out with. And a lot of times what happens with young girls, and some of you might have had this, where girls get bad acne, and so they put them on a really potent drug to get rid of the acne. But when you're on that drug to get rid of the acne, if you get pregnant, your baby can have serious developmental and congenital birth defects. So while they're putting these young girls on acne medicine, they also tell them that you have to go on the pill. And so this is what happens. You don't even know it. The doctor's just doing this because in medical advice, they don't really get to know their patients. And they're really afraid that if this girl gets pregnant and I have her on this medicine, she's going to come and sue me, for having a birth defect. So the pill actually places a woman in a state of false pregnancy with her hormones, and thus leaves the woman actually not interested in sex. So a lot of people are on the pill, and you're using it to prevent pregnancy, but the problem is that it also decreases your libido, because that's what those hormones do during that time. So you're in the state of pre-pregnancy, your body thinks you're partially pregnant, and so your libido decreases. So I also want you to know that, because I would think as husbands to be that you would want your wife to want you, and you would want your wife to find you desirable. So by adding all those extra hormones, it actually lowers your woman's feeling of that love and that connection with you. The pill also decreases the crypts, which I'm going to show you a picture of, that actually produce all the cervical mucus. And the cervical mucus is what women need in order to keep the sperm safe, give it a good environment so that you can get pregnant. So the pill actually decreases the ability of a woman to produce the cervical mucus, which she's going to need later. Okay. Plus, many women do not take the pill at the same time. So I know they give it a lot to teenagers. Teenagers don't even clean their room or brush their teeth. And you think that they're going to take the pill, right, at the same time. But it doesn't work, very well if you're taking it at different times. Also, if you have a cold and you take medicine, the pill is not as effective. So, I want you to know how the culture is saying, use the pill. It's a really safe way to have intercourse without having a baby. And I'm telling you that there are so many medical complications and serious issues that can happen with taking these contraception. There's also the interuterine device. And what these are, guys, is that if this is a woman's, that's the uterus, this is the ovary, and this is the cervix, they put this device in like this. It looks like a T, okay? So if an egg comes through the fallopian tubes, this particular intrauterine device is supposed to stop it from coming through, and it's supposed to stop the sperm from finding the egg to fertilize, okay? But what happens is that a lot of times it's not put in right, or it doesn't work, and sperm actually get around, and it actually fertilizes, and it usually fertilizes inside this fallopian tube, and then it can't move down into the uterus, and some women have lost their fallopian tubes because of that, because they do end up getting pregnant anyways. It's not foolproof. So if the fertilized egg is left alone, it can grow, and then it's not going to implant inside the uterus. Plus, again, you can have these intrauterine devices with hormones or without. And if you have them with hormones, the same thing that I talked about with you about the pill can happen with those as well. Another thing is the condom. We know about the condom. And this is interesting, is that when you put a condom on, usually at this point, a man is very excited, so he's putting the condom on, and that pre-ejaculatory fluid from a man is 100 times more concentrated than the actual semen that comes out later. So a man is already excited. He's seeing his beautiful, wife, and he's getting excited. There's already ejaculation on the outside. And so as he's putting on the condom, it's all on his hands. It's all on the outside of the condom. So that's why condoms are really don't work that well at all. But just so you know, that's another thing with condom. Did you want to say anything else about? Keep going? All right. Okay. So we alluded to natural family planning. So now I'm going to tell you, well, what is this? And I want you to know that this is, it's not some archaic way of, it's going to come up, yeah. It's not some archaic way. No, it'll come up. It's just because, oh, it turned up. Okay. So it's not like an archaic way of monitoring your fertility, okay? People tried to time ovulation with the rhythm method, but natural family planning is not the rhythm method. And it is not archaic, and it is, or any way primitive. It's scientifically based, and if you use it correctly, it's 99.5% effective. So I'm going to show you how it works. And this just comes down to a choice. I just want you to know that there is choices you can make to enjoy sexual intercourse, and you could time it so that you can avoid pregnancy if that's your choice at that time. So, do you go with contraception, what the world and the culture would do, or are you going to choose tonight? Let's try this natural family planning. So this is what it is. Is it?
Okay, can you figure out how to get this thing back? to me already.
Go to HDMI 1 again. There, now click it.
It could be that in the computer it's displaying.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, how do I get it big again there?
Yeah, wait, thank you.
How do I get that big again?
Yeah. Oh, I hope Mr. Stola goes on.
I don't know if you can, do you know where full screen is?
I don't know.
Well, you know, Father John is taking on my volunteer.
Right here?
He's always fixing those issues. Mr. Stola, it's like, hey,
All right, well, this is okay. We'll just do it this way.
Let's see.
If you go to slideshow on the top right
Yeah.
there,
Where?
Play
Nope.
full screen.
next to record, slide to your left.
See where it says slideshow next to record, right, you're almost there. Now, one over to the right, no, no, no,
Keep-
no.
Yeah,
Almost,
no.
left, left, left.
No.
One more.
Yeah, right there.
you go. And then full screen. If we hit slideshow.
Hit slideshow, click.
Is the drop down menu?
No.
Yeah, from the beginning.
All the way to the left.
It's on slideshow.
On slideshow.
Yeah, and then
There you, what now?
There we go. Okay, good.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so there's many different, there's the Billings method, there is the couple-to-couple league. I chose learning the Crichton method because coming from a medical profession background, I really liked all the medical and all the research that they did, and that somebody can learn natural family planning from me, and then let's say they move to a different state, we can find another Crichton fertility practitioner that can pick up right where I left off. So. Okay, so this is just about appreciating your fertility. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to monitor, maintain, and evaluate. I'm going to do it really quickly just to give you a basic overview of it. And then later I want you to think if this is something you'd like to learn, then we'll meet, and it usually takes an hour, and usually you meet about 4 or 5 times within a 3 to 4 month period, and really get good at getting to know your own chart and getting to know your own cycle. And so that's what we're going to do. So the Crichton method is broken down in fertility care and naprotechnology. So if there is a problem with your fertility, there are physicians that are trained in naprotechnology, which are natural ways of helping women, whether they have ovarian cysts or other issues of fertility, and they can help correct them a natural way. So I can, this natural family planning of the Crichton can help you achieve pregnancy. It can help you avoid. It can help you time conception. Like if you're a teacher and you want to kind of time your conception so you have the baby right when school is ending. You can, it tells you, it'll tell you when you're going to have a baby. It's so down to the day. And it also helps with spice instruction and marital bonding. Now, spice instruction is like those times when your wife is really, really fertile. We give it an acronym SPICE because during those times when you can't be intimate with your wife, you can be intimate in other ways. And that is how you're bonding spiritually, how you're bonding physically or psychologically, how you're bonding intellectually, communicative, and emotionally. So, you know, we show you ways to bond with your wife on the times when you have to avoid intercourse, okay? So this is all about watching fertility, miscarriage. It'll help you maintain pregnancy. It can even be used with irregular cycles. It can be used with hormone problems. If you have premenstrual syndrome, which a lot of women have, it can help in dealing with ovarian cysts. If you have unusual bleeding, it tells you the health of that, and also the effects of stress and how it affects your cycle. Okay, it's tailor-made for you. So right now I'm giving you an overview, but if you want to meet later, we'll go over what your cycle is showing and how you learn. Okay, so the advantages are that it's medically safe. It is, where is it coming out? It's proven reliable. It's pretty inexpensive once you learn it. Sometimes I get together with women later after they've had a baby and they want to learn how your body changes after having a baby and after breastfeeding, and we can go over that too later as your body changes. It is a shared system between the husband and the wife, and it respects the dignity of women in marriage, and it's standardized, and it's natural and cooperative between you and your spouse. So this system is based on solid scientific education. You observe markers of your body, which what we're saying is your cervical mucus. That's what's going to tell you when you're ovulating. It's easy to learn, easy to interpret. Okay, so this is a basic review of anatomy. Men are always fertile. On any given day, men are always the same. They never change, and they're always fertile, okay? This is their fertility. It is a sperm with the flagellum, which lets it get where it needs to go, okay? This is just talking about where the bladder is, and here you have the vas deferens, which also takes brings the sperm from the testicles all the way out through the urethra, and with your ejaculation. This same urethra also is responsible for urination too. And that's why men's testicles are on the outside, because sperm are affected by heat. So that's why. Women are at most times infertile. So if you compare a man's fertility to a woman's fertility, if you combine them together, most couples are infertile. You're only fertile for a certain time of the month. So that's really important to know. So when you combine men's fertility being always and women's being, infertile, when you combine them, you're mostly infertile. So you have to find those days of fertility, and that's what I help you find. Okay, this is the uterus. These are the ovaries. These are the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tubes are what grab the egg when it's released from the ovary and brings it, once fertilized, into the uterus where it can implant and the baby can grow. This is the cervix, and this is the vaginal area. Okay, so this is, again, if this is where they take women's pap smears here. This, again, are these cervical crypts that I was talking about. This is where the hormones help produce that cervical mucus that you really, really need to be fertile. Again, this is the wall of the uterine wall. This is the ovary, and these are the fallopian tubes. Okay, these are the phases of a basic woman, and this could be the same woman. Let's say this is the same woman. This is January, February, March, let's just say. The pre-ovulatory, before a woman ovulates from the ovary, it's always irregular, okay? So the pre-ovulatory can be any amount of days, okay? If you have a regular cycle, a long cycle, this is always variable in length. Once a woman ovulates, and that's what I'm going to teach you how to do, once you ovulate and once you recognize when you ovulate, the post-ovulatory phase is always stable within a day. So once we figure out when you ovulate and what your body's telling you, then you know within a day when you're going to have your next menstrual cycle. Does that make sense to everybody? So let's say you're planning a wedding and you think that you're going to be ovulating soon, but you're stressed out, you're sick, you're taking medicine, the in-laws are coming in, okay? God is so smart that he wants you to get pregnant when you're perfectly ready and perfectly healthy. So he's going to delay this ovulation until you're completely healthy. So that's why women can have, varying days. And that's why the rhythm method doesn't work, because a woman is different every month. Sometimes you can be the same, but a lot of times you're different. The only thing that you know is this pre-mucus cycle. This is what's going to lead up to tell you when you're going to ovulate. And what produces the cervical mucus? The cervical crypts, which is really important to your body. This is an enlarged version of an ovary, okay? A woman is born, when they're a newborn baby, they're born with as many eggs as they're going to have the rest of their life, okay? Millions of eggs. Every month, 1 or 2 eggs are chosen by their body on usually one side. It might be the right side on 1 month. The next month, it could be the left side. Some women only drop eggs on the right side or the left side. Sometimes they alternate. But it's chosen. As the follicle is increased, what happens is in a woman's cycle, the estrogen is increased. So as estrogen increases, the follicle increases and it gets ready to release the egg. So the way that the follicle increases is estrogen. So some women don't have enough estrogen, and that could be a problem. And that's why when I'm looking at you, I'm looking at your cycle and I'm seeing what is the health of your fertility cycle. And once this follicle is enlarged, estrogen is stopped and the egg is released. And then this same follicle then turns into the yellow body. It's called the corpus luteum. So the released egg follicle turns into this, and now this same follicle that produced estrogen and helped the body produce estrogen now produces progesterone. And progesterone is needed to increase the lining of the uterus. So you need progesterone to increase the lining, because when the baby comes to implant in here, if you don't have enough lining and you don't have enough progesterone, the baby cannot survive. And then it starts all over again. Does anybody have questions yet? I mean, here, I was in physical therapy school, and my mother, nobody, even during my pre-Cana, nobody ever told me about this. Yeah?
Is the ovulation itself when the egg is released?
Yes. And it only happens within a 24-hour period, usually within like 6 hours. But it can happen within a 24-hour period. That's why if you have twins, if you have 2 eggs, the 2 eggs are released, boom, within that 24-hour period. It's not released one day and then comes, 3 days later. Both eggs. Or if it's twins that are identical, where the one egg is, and then when it's fertilized, it splits. Same thing. Everything happens at that time. This is a longitudinal. So it's showing the lining of the uterine wall. So now you're bleeding during your menstruation. Okay, now the follicle is being chosen. Okay, estrogen. See, estrogen is increasing. Estrogen is increasing the follicle, increasing the follicle. Now estrogen drops, the egg is released, and now progesterone is increasing the lining of the uterine wall, so that if you become pregnant, you'll have a really nice area for the egg to implant. Like I said, ovulation occurs only 1 day in each cycle. And the egg only lives 12 to 24 hours if not fertilized. I've heard recently that they think the egg only lives about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. It's a wonder that people even get pregnant. If you think about how everything has to be in perfect harmony. But God, again, is the creator of life. He knows how perfect it can be. Now, sperm need mucus to survive. So remember what I was telling you about when you're on the pill, it decreases those cervical crypts. The more cervical mucus that you have, the more you will protect that sperm. So if you have intercourse and the cervical mucus is protecting that sperm, the sperm can live, oh my goodness, it dies if it doesn't have mucus, but sperm with good mucus can live 3 to 5 days in that mucus of yours until your egg is released, and then the sperm is ready to. So even though the egg is only released in 1 day, you really have 3 or 4 days with good mucus to allow this to happen in perfect harmony. Does that make sense? The hormone estrogen, like I said, reaches a peak the day before ovulation, right before it's released. So this is just showing estrogen is increasing. Right when ovulation happens, estrogen decreases. And what hormone then takes over? That's right, progesterone. And what does progesterone do? Increases the lining. Good. So the hormone estrogen also stimulates the cervical crypts to produce mucus. This is amazing. This is like perfect human selection, okay? These are the cervical crypts. This is the cervix, okay? This is just showing what's in the cervical crypts. This is showing the mucus, okay? And the mucus, the more mucus you have, the thinner the mucus is for the women, the more stretchy it is, the clearer it is, the more channels you have for the sperm to get up. But did you know it only lets the most perfect heads of sperm go through? So if you had a double-headed sperm, men, or if you have a sperm that's too big, it only lets the most perfect sperm in, okay? So this is the estrogen type E mucus. As soon as the egg is released, then it becomes like a progesterone type, where it's thick. They can't get through. They can't get through. So these are on your days where you're dry, where you don't have any mucus. So that's why if you have no mucus, you cannot get pregnant. This is under a microscope what it actually looks like. You could see type E, when the estrogen is being released, these look like swimming channels. And remember, the clearer it is, the more lubricative it is, the stretchier it is, it gives you more swimming channels and more opportunity for the sperm to get through, okay? When you have that type G or progesterone type, it looks like a brick wall. No sperm's gonna get through there. So those are your dry days, okay? So this is if you were looking at a woman's, you're looking at her cervix under a microscope, or through the speculum that they go in when they see their obstetrician. So they're looking. Now think of ovulation day minus 4 days before, okay? there's a little bit of mucus coming out, okay? But now look at the peak day. This is the day when the egg's gonna be released. You can see all the amount of estrogen, all the amount of cervical mucus coming out. Then all of a sudden, the egg's released, all those gates are shut down, and you return to dryness now, where there's no more mucus coming out. So that's just kind of a really visual, so you can see exactly what's going on in the cervix, okay? These are showing the number of swimming channels, okay? So on these peak days is when you have the most swimming channels, the most opportunity to get pregnant. Because remember, the more mucus you have, the better mucus you have, the longer your husband's sperm can survive. So fertility depends on good sperm, good eggs, and good mucus. This just shows one of the eggs getting through and is going to fertilize. This shows that when the egg is released and it goes here, most of the sperm make it, and they usually, they enter it and they usually fertilize the egg inside the fallopian tubes. And then it takes 6 to 9 days while it's replicating to attach into here. So even though it's fertilized out here, it usually takes about 6 to 9 days for it to become implanted in the uterine wall. Okay, and then a baby forms. Okay, and then if the egg is not fertilized, we begin the cycle all over again. Okay, so you need to know that pregnancy can result from any genital contact on days of fertility, even without penetration. Because remember, if a man gets excited and any of that sperm is on your hand or on his hand, and then it touches any area of the cervical mucus, you can get pregnant. And if you're avoiding pregnancy, this system works by avoiding all genital contact during the days that are considered fertile. So that's how and that's when you use those spice technique. You use those, and if my husband was here, he would say that, when usually he's leaning over and he's putting his arm around me, and he knows that it's a good day. We can have sex, this is good. I know that the arm around me is gonna lead to something, But if we're both on the same page and we know that today's a day of fertility and we don't want to have a baby right now, when he puts his arm around me, I know he's just putting his arm around me and talking to me and loving me because he loves me, and that's a beautiful thing to be able to have with each other, that all physical touch isn't going to lead to sex if you respect each other and respect the fertility and respect what you want to do. Now, Maria, I was 44 years old. And we were open to life, but I remember telling him, Jack, if you want a 6th baby, this still could happen. He's like, come on, let's go. And then there comes Maria, So, but we had a communication about it. I'm sure you had those conversations too. So it's all good. Yeah. Of course he did. Oh, I love it. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay, we have days of menstruation. Then we're followed by dry days. Then we develop these mucus symptoms of mucus. Then we have a peak day where it's really, really stretchy, really, really clear. And then the egg is released, and then it's followed usually by dry days. Okay, so now you're saying, well, why are you only counting from here to here? Remember, from here to the peak day is always variable, because you could have stress, you could have, you could be sick, you could be whatever. So the only way you know when you're going to be fertile is you're monitoring your cervical mucus, and that's by wiping paper before and after you go to the bathroom. That's how I teach everybody to do it. There are no internal examinations. It's all what you're wiping on your paper, and then that'll tell you what your cervical mucus is. So after your peak day, that's when you do your count. And remember, within a day if when your period's going to start. Okay, so how to check for the biological markers? You're wiping the opening of the vagina, then you're looking at the tissue, and if there is any mucus on the tissue, you're stretching it and seeing how much it stretches, how clear it is. That's how you're testing. And I guarantee you will begin to see it. My daughter was 16 years old, and I remember her coming to me and saying, Mom, what is this coming out of me? And I said, well, what is it? And she showed me, and I said, she thought she had an infection. I said, no, that's your cervical mucus. That is a good thing. She goes, what are you talking about? And then I had to go over all the teaching with her about this. But anyway, so that coming out of you is a good thing. I said, Sarah, that's a wonderful thing. That means your fertility is healthy. That's what you're supposed to do. So the 3 C's in checking are, you're looking at the color of your mucus, the consistency, how much it's stretching, The change from day to day, is it getting more thin? Is it getting more clear? Is it getting more lubricative? And the sensation, okay? When charting begins, for the first month, you're avoiding all sexual contact. So, because you need to know what your cervical mucus looks like. So that's why it's really good for you to start before you get married. So it's really good to start now and start charting now so you know exactly what your body's doing, okay? This is what the chart looks like. These are what the stamps look like. And so this would be your days of bleeding. We have a heavy day, moderate, and a light day, okay? Then we go into some dry days where there's no mucus, there's nothing. And then you're gonna have your mucus symptoms begin, and you're gonna show how the mucus cycle is increasing. Then on the last day of cervical mucus, you know the day after that you ovulated. So it doesn't really matter whether you ovulate the day or the day before. If you're trying to prevent pregnancy, you're not having intercourse on those days that you have mucus, okay? Now we always wait 3 days after your peak, okay? That nobody's ever gotten pregnant on the 4th day at the end of the day, but people have gotten pregnant on the day after, because depending on how that cervical mucus is holding those sperm and how many days and how good your cervical mucus is going to indicate that. So these would be the days that you cannot have intercourse. Then you followed by dry days and you start your cycle all over again. Remember, this is always variable. This is always stable, okay? So this is just showing a different woman, the same woman, different months. So this is showing how she had, you know, an early ovulation, a late ovulation, and maybe a regular ovulation. But if you counted these days, and these days, they're all within a day of each other. So that's very, very stable. It's very, very stable. Now with Mikey, my middle one, I got pregnant here. We went away on a vacation, and we hadn't been on a vacation in like 3 years, and we were at a bed and breakfast, and I'm like, Jack, I'm starting to have cervical mucus. I might be ovulating early. And he's like, and then Mikey came, come on, we got this bed, so little Mikey came right there, So anyway, so that was it. So I do, because I was like, Jack, this could happen. He's like, and sure enough, we were in Newport, Rhode Island. Yes, it was on a bed. No, I'm kidding. So again, this shows the estrogen and how the estrogen increases right before you ovulate, and then it drops, and then what increases after? Progesterone. All right. This is showing a woman with long cycles, maybe, like I said, stress of planning a wedding, everything. Okay. This is showing a chart when you're breastfeeding, it's just really interesting. And when I teach you how to observe your cervical mucus, you'll know when you're going to have, when your fertility is going to return. Okay. Some people have discharge all the time. So, and that's a little bit harder to deal with, but it's still doable. But I suggest you start now, because you might be the type of woman that has a little bit of discharge every day. So we have to teach you how to recognize your daily discharge and what your cervical mucus really looks like. Okay. So this system is all about, whether you have limited mucus cycles, whether you have dry, months of dry cycles, if you have premenstrual spotting, if you have tail end brown bleeding, all these things can tell us the health of your fertility. If you have a little bit of brown bleeding before you have your period, it usually means you're a little bit low in progesterone, or if you have a very short cycle after you ovulate, it usually means you're low progesterone. And so if I find that out, I would encourage you to, if you're trying to get pregnant, to make sure you're taking some progesterone every day after you ovulate. So that's why it's important to know when you ovulate. And then if you don't have enough progesterone, then you take progesterone, you know what I mean, to get pregnant. Because what's going to happen is if you are low progesterone and you don't know about this, you might try to have a baby and you're going to have a miscarriage. Because if you don't have enough progesterone, you don't have enough of that lining for the baby to implant. Does that make sense? So it's really good to know these things. And some of them aren't a big deal. It's a very easy way, a natural way you can do it. So this just shows different things here. This is interesting. I've charted my whole life, and I was having some irregular bleeding inside, and I went to my obstetrician and I said, listen, I am having irregular bleeding. Cathy, you're just premenopausal. I go, yeah, no, I'm not. I've been charting my whole life. This is just not normal. And sure enough, she goes, okay. She did an ultrasound and I had polyps. Now, sometimes polyps don't turn into anything, but they can turn into cancer. So I knew the health of me, and I decided, no, this is not normal for me, And she took out the polyps and she goes, Cathy, I'm really sorry. I learned a lesson from you today. I learned that I need to trust, especially somebody who's charting, who's done it their whole life. This is not normal for me. So who knows? It could have turned into precancer if she just blew it off, but we checked it out. This is showing low progesterone. See, really, this is her post-cycle. Her post-ovulatory cycle. That's too short. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You need at least 9 days. So these are things that when I'm teaching you, that I'll be able to look at your cycle and find out. And this person had a miscarriage because they only had 5 days. So the egg, even though it was fertilized, never implanted, didn't have the opportunity to implant, and they lost their baby. So just a review, the cervical fluid, it begins as sticky, tacky, cloudy. And then as the estrogen increases, as the follicle is getting larger, the cervical mucus increases its stretchability, its clearness, its lubrication. It's just, you'll know. And that last day of very, very fertile mucus, you ovulate. And then you return to your normal, usually dry days. And the peak day is the last day of that really good mucus. And after the peak, you're going to know a dramatic change. You're going to know that cervical crypt's cut off and, the progesterone's kicking in and there's no more estrogen to give you that cervical mucus anymore because you've already released your egg from that follicle. Does that make sense to everybody? So days of fertility and infertility. In the beginning, we say some days of fertility are your menstrual cycle. Look at Mikey. I got pregnant the day after my last light day of my period. So I have to teach you how to, when you have those short cycles, how to navigate around them. And I teach you how to do that. So if you do not want to get pregnant, even in a short cycle, you won't, because I will teach you how to evaluate your cervical mucus, even on short cycles. Okay, so the Creighton can be used to achieve pregnancy. It can be used to avoid. These were the research that they had. They had like 1,800 couples enrolled. They used it for 17,000 months. There was 5 centers participating. The method effectiveness was 99.5% effective. If they used it the right way, if they used it, I do not want to get pregnant. I am using it this way. They didn't get pregnant. But see, this use effectiveness, some people, Jack, I could get pregnant. Let's get pregnant. Then it goes down because you're changing what you think you want. So that's how those numbers went down. But if you're using it for your purpose and you're sticking by your guns of why you're using it, but that's the beauty of it. You can change your mind on any given day. So that's it. So this is kind of interesting. This is couples of normal fertility. This is really interesting, okay? If I teach you how to chart your cycle and you want to get pregnant, in the first month, 76% of people who have normal fertility got pregnant. By the third month, almost all of them, if they had normal fertility, got pregnant. So what does this happen? You go to a gynecologist. You say, I have not gotten pregnant in 3, 4, 5 months. And what does the gynecologist tell you? Oh, the fun is in the trying. Just keep trying. No, if you're with me and you're using the days of fertility and you are not getting pregnant within 3 months, we are going immediately and figuring out what's wrong. Immediately. Yeah, well, and yeah, right? That's his story, and he's sticking to it. But yeah, so that's the beauty of it. Within 3 months, if you're using days of fertility, you should get pregnant. So that's it. And even people that had abnormal fertility, and maybe they were going for fertility treatments or something, if they just used the NAPRO technology along with this method, whether it was giving them hormone therapy, helping them, it increased almost to 80%, even those people that had fertility issues, just by doing natural things. So when using the method to avoid pregnancy, you want to use the days that So this is just saying there's no taking second chances. If you're using a day of fertility to have sex, guess what? You can get pregnant, you know? If you don't use the days of fertility, then you're not going to get pregnant. So, but you have to choose. So on any given day, you can choose whether you're going to, you know, plan or avoid or whatever. And that's why you use the system together. Because my husband would look at the thing and he'd be like, okay, it's a green day. We're going, you know? And when he saw the other and be like, oh my God, I've changed so many diapers. Okay, hands off. I'm not gonna, you know, so that's it. So all it takes is your time, energy, and your patience. It's an investment for the rest of your life. But I think what's really important is I love teaching you all, but I think my main purpose is I love teaching young girls in high school. I mean, don't you wish that you would have learned all this in high school, you know, about your bodies and things like that, you know? And I want you to know, boys, on every given day, your wife-to-be is different. Her hormonal is different every single day. You guys are the same every day, but a woman's chemical makeup is different every single day. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. So,
Let me ask two basic
yeah.
questions for the group, okay?
yeah,
One is, we got all these charts, diagrams.
yeah.
Things going around. Do you have to be a nurse or a doctor to figure out how to do this? How hard is it for an ordinary person to know how to do
Yeah,
this?
and this is interesting. You know when you're building a house and you're putting a roof on, and all you notice when you're driving down the street is roofs, right? So that's how it is with this. You're going to be like, how am I doing this? Am I doing this? Within a couple weeks, within usually 1 month, you'd be like, yeah, I'm starting to get this. It's not hard. It's really not hard at all. So the average person can use it. I learned to use it even before I became a practitioner, and it worked really, really well for us. So
Second real basic
Yeah.
question. Something that's on everybody's mind, I think. How many days during an average month is it that you have to abstain?
yeah, that's a good question. And this is something, if my husband was here, he would say to everybody, this is what he would say. You know, women, we have to make ourselves available on the days that that we're not fertile. So if our intention is to not be fertile, and it can be anywhere from, let's say, of a normal 28-day cycle, let's just take an average. You probably can't have intercourse about 8 to 9 of those days. Okay, if it works out, that's pretty much about the thing. So that's what it is. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, because this is the thing too, guys, you have to remember, is the days of fertility, your wife wants to have sex. So you think it's not fair to you? Really, it's really not fair to her either, because on those days, she's lubricated. Her body is full of estrogen. I mean, you know, you want an animal, that's when, you know, and it's not easy, right? So, you know, you think it's all, oh, poor me. Really, those are the times when she really wants it and she can't have it. So women, it's not easy either, but it's worth it. It's worth it. But this is what my husband would say to you. And I made mistakes along the way, and I'm going to share to you the mistake I made. And girls, please don't do this. I was doing physical therapy, so I'd be touching people a couple times a day, all day, these old people. Then I come home, I'm tired. And then I got a baby, she's nursing on me, and I loved it, but there's nothing else I can give. And there was a lot of days that were my days of dryness where I know I wasn't fertile, that I didn't offer myself to my husband. And he was a good sport, but, you know, later he would say, you know, that really wasn't fair to me. You know, I respect you, Cathy, and, you know, but that really wasn't fair to me. So if I could go back again and I would do it, girls, make yourself available on the days that you can make yourself available. And just know that we all need it. We need it to grow. We need it to connect. And that. Does that make sense? But I want boys to know it's also hard for women too, you know? So, but on the days that it works, like Mikey, you know, a little bit early, you know, it's so good. It's so good. And it's so rewarding. And so that's it. So are you ever ready to have kids? Will you ever have enough money? I promise you that God will give you all the grace and that you can do all things through Christ who strengthen you. And God will never be outdone on his generosity. I know in our family, every single time we had a kid, guess what my husband got? A raise. Okay? And another thing, you know, you need to realize, how much do you really, really need? Can you shop at thrift stores? Heck yeah. Do my kids all play hockey? Do you guys know how expensive hockey is? They all play travel hockey. How do I afford it? I don't know. Oh yeah. And they all go to private schools. How do I afford that? I don't know, but we're doing it. I don't live in a big house, but love grows best in what? little houses. Isn't there a country western song like that? I don't know. But anyways, the love grows best in little houses, and it's awesome. I have 4 boys in the back bedroom on 2 sets of bunk beds. And the boys have to go through the girls' bedroom to get to their room. And we even have my handicapped brother-in-law. He's living with us now too. And what a joy. I mean, I didn't think that was going to happen. And Uncle Mike has been a blessing in our family. So you don't need a big house. We have 5 cars because I have all these kids driving, you know? And I need them to drive somebody to hockey when I can't go. But are they beaters? Yeah, I got 200,000 miles on a bunch of them. But it's just the choices you make, you know? And remember, the culture is going to tell you this, and you got to be like, yeah, no, the culture is going to give you a bunch of lies. You got to be like, what's really, really? So let's rewrite the narrative on motherhood and being a father. And I just want you to know, we are so blessed. I know Dan's so blessed. And yeah, I couldn't imagine my life without the kids. I mean, I'm looking forward to being a grandmother someday. I'm looking forward to retiring. But the life is awesome, and it's better than I could have planned it, I'll tell you that much. So does anybody else have any questions? Anybody? Yes. Yep. Yep, you got to go.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So why don't we take a little fast break? You know where the washrooms are? Is they're up right here, and then there's some upstairs too. And I'll try to get ourselves set up.
There you go. Did I get it?
This is of the sessions. This is the longest one, this fourth session, because we not only covered all the biology, but now we're going to go into a look back, and also a look both from the top and from the bottom and all around. Take a couple of steps as to why we have all this stuff. You know, you could say, gee, you know, what is this big thing? Okay, marriage in the church. Here you are, you're going to be going through basically 10 classes of stuff. Okay, and that's only one drop in the bucket. I mean, it's obvious, as Father John said before, that the Catholic Church makes a very, very big thing about marriage. And you know, a secular person might say, why? And what is religion? What does the church have to do with it? I mean, this is just between us. I mean, what is all this stuff? Okay. And you'll see here, I hope, there's the picture that I put out on the announcement, you know, marriage in the church. What is the link? And here, of course, is another beautiful church with a couple there for their wedding mass on their wedding day. Why does the church make such a big thing out of marriage? And, you know, it's a sociological fact. It's central to Catholic culture. In every place where the Catholic Church is a dominant religion, marriage and family are a humongous thing. Okay, there years ago, people would go into, you know, pretty poor people would go into debt and Central America and Mexico, you know, all their lives. I mean, to throw something, you know, big for their wedding. They didn't care, okay, because wedding was so important. Everybody in town is there. It's a big deal. And this is a picture of my paisans, okay, my Italians, okay, and of course, there's what confetti originally was, you know, coming down to celebrate the marriage. And this is something really, it's not easy for people outside of a Catholic culture to understand. Because in Catholicism, and let me get my stuff here, marriage is actually one of the 7 sacraments. Okay, it's like one of the ways that we believe we actually receive God's own life in ours. So it's right up there with communion, the Holy Eucharist. It's there with confession. It's there with baptism. Okay, and marriage is right up there with all these other humongous ways of finding Christ and having Christ inside us. You know, it was kind of a funny thing. I mean, as some of you know, maybe none of you know, the two sides of my family, we'll talk about this a little bit later when Pat, my wife, is here, are completely different. Okay, my name, Chile, my last name, is an Anglo name. I mean, they were as white Anglo-Saxon Protestant as can be. Okay, they barely knew how to spell Catholic, and if they didn't want to spell it, they really, you know, call it something else. Okay. On the other hand, my mother's side were all Italian Catholics. Okay, and completely different. The two sides of the family could not have been more different if you could imagine it. And on the Anglo-Saxon side of the family, they, including my dad, wondered, you know, what is all this big thing about, you know, family? You know, why is this? And really, as Father John pointed out, if you can still remember in the first talk, it's one of the essential ways that the church, God, Christ himself, had to understand what God is all about. The big question, why? What do we really mean by that? Well, it's not easy for others to understand, as I pointed out. It's because of this self-giving love thing. This underlines what Christ was all about. It's key to understanding the whole concept of God's love, what happiness really consists in. How do we find happiness? It's all wrapped up paradoxically with self-giving rather than grabbing, okay? Because when you come right down to it, you cut through all the verbiage and all the high philosophical lingo, which I hate, okay? But it's necessary. You got to have some of it, you know, so you understand, people have some idea, clarity of what they're talking about. But what it is there's 2 basic ways of looking at life, okay? Life is for either grabbing all you can, okay? Or life is for giving all you can. And basically, it's God tells us, by virtue of his own life, what he was all about is giving all you can. What he was all about was this self-giving love. And it's interesting because it's that way, because it's what Christ was all about, since Christ is God, it's what God is all about. Since God is the source of the universe, it really explains what the universe is supposed to be all about, and therefore what we are supposed to be all about. And we've all been alive for a period of time. We've seen what people are like who are just grabbers, just eaters, just people who are selfish and want it for themselves. They're always a pain in the you-know-what for everybody, But on the other hand, the person who is in love, is always the one who has a different perspective. One of the things I handed out was, I get a copy of it for myself here, these 2 readings from the Bible. Let me get a couple for myself here. From Corinthians and Ephesians. And the idea of this, these are often readings that people will have for their wedding. And because they're important, and the reason why they're part of the wedding, popular wedding ceremonies, is because people talk a lot about love, but what is it? How do you know it? How do you define it? How do you look at it? And so the first one is, I've got it here from the epistle to the Ephesians, where St. Paul talks about love. Okay, where I've got on both of these things, that heading in bold print, that's actually part of the reading. That's actually part of what St. Paul wrote down. This is not just a heading. This is what he said. I will show you a still more excellent way. If I speak in tongues of men and of angels. So I'm a big shot. I could talk all kinds of theological lingo and know all about it, but have not love. I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, even faith, so as to move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I deliver my body to be burned, if I become a martyr, and have not love, I gain nothing. Well, okay, what is love? What are you talking about? Okay, here's what it looks like. And he goes through it. He explains it. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It's not ignorant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, gotcha, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Years ago, before any of you were born, there was a popular movie at the time, which is it was really a stupid, simplistic movie. It was called Love Story. Okay. And the theme of Love Story was, love means never having to say you're sorry. Baloney. Okay. That's putting it on the other foot. I can do whatever I want. And if she loves me, I never have to say I'm sorry. Whoa. No. That's not what it's all about. It starts from inside our hearts. Am I being patient? Am I being kind? Am I being jealous or boastful? That's what it is. Love is meant to proceed out of us for someone else whom we love. Love, as the apostle goes on, never ends. As for prophecies, they'll pass away. Eventually it'll happen, whatever the guy he was talking about. As for tongues, miraculous tongues, they will cease. Can't talk in tongues all the time. As for knowledge, it will pass away. We all lose our marbles after a while. For our knowledge is imperfect, and our prophecy is imperfect. But when the perfect comes, the love, The imperfect will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I reasoned as a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. For I know in part, then I shall understand fully, even as I have been fully understood. So, faith, hope, love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love. So again, you don't have to be a winner on Bible Baffle or a religious quiz show, okay? But we need this love to really be reflecting what Christ was, what God was, what we're meant to be, where we really hit who we're supposed to be like. Another reading that's very popular, okay, it used to be part of the marriage ceremony in every Catholic marriage, was Ephesians 5, okay, and I think Father John talked about this a little bit too. And it starts out, this is the heading that the apostle puts down. It starts out, be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. He's talking to both, men and women. Be subject to one another. Why? Out of reverence for Christ. Okay, then he first starts with the wives. Wives, be subject to your husband as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church's body, and is himself its Savior. And as the church is subject to Christ, so let wives be subject in everything to their husbands. And now this is always a very popular thing with the guys. Okay, they say, okay, hey, Dan, will you read that one again? Listen to this, honey. Listen to this. He's reading right from the Bible here. Listen up, okay? And all the women start getting their back up a little bit, okay? But then the apostle goes on. The very next sentence, he addresses the husbands. Husbands, love your wives. How? As Christ loved the church. How did Christ love the church? Nailed out of the cross. He gave his life. He gave the last drop of his blood for the church. That he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. Even so, husbands should love their wives as their own body. So when you think about this, okay, taking all the incense out of it, the candles out of it, you just look at these words, okay, and see what they mean. It's really a very sexy analogy. In other words, our love for our wives should be such that it refreshes her. It makes her feel like she just got out of a bath. I mean, that's that's pretty potent. That's pretty powerful. And he puts this down. This is as romantic really as they come, when you think about it. Husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no man ever hates his own flesh, but nourishes, cherishes it, as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery. And I mean in reference to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. So again, as we were talking about this sparkle that's meant to be, it's always, once we're married, what it shouldn't be anymore is a deal. It's no longer what I'm getting out of it. I never have to say I'm sorry. It's now an us. We become two in one. It's a very, very romantic concept. We give the best of what we got to the person we love. Everything we are. Let me show you a little something that illustrates this. This has got to be not theory, but real life for marriage. You hear all these beautiful words, this great stuff, okay? In everything that we hear in love songs, only you, forever, to the end of time, the church believes and wants that love to be reflected in our lives and in our marriages. The best we got to give. Let's take a look.
Mary, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and next year and the year after that. I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little town outside. I'm going to see the world. Italy, Greece, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. Then I'm coming back here and go to college and see what they know. And then I'm going to build things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories high. I'm going to build bridges a mile long. Were you going to throw a rock? that's pretty good. What'd you wish, Mary?
Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight?
Dance by the light of the moon. What'd you wish when you threw the bra?
Oh, no.
Come on, tell me.
If I don't, it might not come true.
What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Barry.
I'll take it. Then what?
Well, then you could swallow it. And it'd all dissolve, see? And the moonbeams would shoot out of your fingers and your toes and the ends of your hair. Am I talking too much?
Yes. Why don't you kiss her instead of talking to death?
How's that?
Why don't you kiss her instead of talking to death?
Want me to kiss her, huh?
Oh, youth is wasted on the wrong people.
All right. How about it, Mary? I'll give you the moon. In a way, that's what we say, what we really mean in the Christian sense. I love you. I want to marry you. I want to give my life to you. I want to share it all. And I want it to be good for you. I want you to be refreshed. I want you to be enriched. I might not have enough. I might not have a lot. I might not have much of anything, but what I've got is now going to be with you and for you. That's pretty darn romantic. That's a tall element, but it creates and refreshes and makes things happen and fills lives. There was an old movie on just last night. My wife and I were watching. It's about a big family from 100 years ago, Cheaper by the Dozen. Okay, and the dad of the family was kind of an eccentric, kind of goofy guy in a lot of ways. But as we were looking at it, we said, you know, the whole thing worked in other families that we know where these kinds of things, despite all kinds of difficulties and struggles and everything that Cathy was talking about, how do they work? And it works, I think, in a couple of ways. One, if the husband and wife are into each other, okay, you know what I mean? You got to kind of love the person that you want to be with. You got to be into her or him, as the case may be, and into the whole love thing. Both those things have to be there. If it's just for yourself, I want this, okay, you're never going to have this kind of George Bailey thing. It's never going to work. But if you're into each other and you love each other and you really want it for that person and you're into the whole thing of love and marriage, you want to make this romance a reality, okay, then all of a sudden it starts to work. And what's the biggest danger to this ideal? Okay, the biggest danger is the biggest competing religion in America today. And the biggest competing religion to Christianity in America today is not Islam, it's not Buddhism, it's what I call meism. Everything is about me. It's all about me. And when you got meism, okay, you can't be into somebody else. If something is filled with salt, it can't be filled with pepper. If everything is all about me, it can't be that much about you. And if it's all about me, it's never enough, because there's an infinite hole in my heart and in your heart that can't be filled with anything except God. And so if we're grabbing, we're never going to be able to grab enough. But on the other hand, if we're giving, we're enriching someone, and we're enriching others, it changes. I want to show you another picture about somebody who's into meism, but there's a guy that's in love with her. And she's all over the place, but doesn't want to come down and really settle down at all. I mean, she wants to turn the world upside down, okay, have a ball while she's doing it, but all of a sudden she's confronted with somebody who actually loves her for herself. It creates a whole different thing. And here he is.
Ollie, I'm in love with you.
What?
So what? So plenty. I love you. You belong to me.
People People don't belong to people.
Of course they do.
I'm not gonna let anyone put me in a cage.
I don't want to put you in a cage. I want to love you.
The same thing.
No, it's not. Holly,
I'm not Holly. I'm not Luna May either. I don't know who I am. I'm like Pat here. We're a couple of no-name slobs. We belong to nobody, and nobody belongs to us. We don't even belong to each other. Stop the cab. What do you think? This ought to be the right kind of place for a tough guy like you. Garbage cans, rats galore. Clam! I said take off. See it. Let's go.
driver. Pull over here.
You know what's wrong with you, Miss whoever you are? You're a chicken. You've got no guts. You're afraid to stick out your chin and say, okay, life's a fact. People do fall in love. People do belong to each other. Because that's the only chance anybody's got for real happiness. You call yourself a free spirit, a wild thing. And you're terrified somebody's gonna stick you in a cage. Well, baby, you're already in that cage. You built it yourself. And it's not bounded on the west by Tulip, Texas, or on the east by Somaliland. It's wherever you go. Because no matter where you run, you just end up running into yourself. Here, I've been carrying this thing around for months. I don't want it anymore.
Where's the cat?
I don't know.
with love, you find yourself. With love, you find more than yourself. You find yourself in love and giving for love. I did something that's a little tricky here. What I did is I held back a paper from you guys. I'm going to give it to you now because I didn't want you reading it before we got to this part. This, what I'm about to give you, comes something from the annals of the church, annals of the Catholic Church. Before 1965, this exhortation was read at every Roman Catholic wedding throughout the 6 continents of the known world. I'm going to read it to you now. After 65, for some reason, they kiboshed this. It's no longer part of the wedding ceremony. It used to be part of every wedding ceremony. I used to live, when I was a kid, not too far, 5 or 6 blocks away from the church. And sometimes when there'd be weddings on Saturday, they had forgotten to assign altar boys to it. And so since I was nearby, they gave me a call. And I served in a lot of ways. I love serving weddings because in the old days, and this is, I think, kind of a nice thing, they should still do it. They used to give the altar boys a little tip. They give them some money. Okay, so I used to make some money, serving masses. And I heard this exhortation read countless times, so many times that I pretty much do have it memorized. I'm going to read it to you now, and you're going to have a copy of it to take home if you want, because think of it as opposed to B'ism. This exhortation, which is what the church would guide its people about understanding what they were getting into and what it meant and what it was all about. Here's what the priest used to tell each couple at the wedding mass. My dear friends, you are about to enter upon a union which is most serious and most sacred. It is most sacred because established by God himself. By it, he gave to man a share in the greatest work of creation, the work of the continuation of the human race. And in this way, he sanctified human love and enabled man and woman to help each other live as children of God by sharing a common life under his fatherly care. Because God himself is thus its author, marriage is of its very nature a holy institution, requiring of those who enter into it what? A complete and unreserved giving of self. But Christ our Lord added to the holiness of marriage an even deeper meaning and a higher beauty. He referred to the love of marriage to describe his own love for the church, as we just read. That is, for the people of God whom he redeemed by his own blood. And so he gave to Christians a new vision of what married life ought to be. A life of self-sacrificing love like his own. It is for this reason that his apostle, St. Paul, clearly states that marriage is now and for all time to be considered a great mystery, intimately bound up with the supernatural union of Christ and the church, which union is also to be its pattern. This union then is most serious because it will bind you together for life in a relationship so close and so intimate that it will profoundly influence your whole future. That future, with its hopes and disappointments, its successes and its failures, its pleasures and its pains, its joys and its sorrows, is hidden from your eyes. You know that these elements are mingled in every life and are to be expected in your own. And so, not knowing what is before you, you take each other for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death. Truly then, these words are most serious. It is a beautiful tribute to your undoubted faith in each other that, recognizing their full import, you are nevertheless so willing and ready to pronounce them. And because these words involve such solemn obligations, it is most fitting that you rest the security of your wedded life upon the great principle of self-sacrifice. And so, you begin your married life by the voluntary and complete surrender of your individual lives in the interest of that deeper and wider life which you are to have in common. Henceforth, you will belong entirely to each other. You will be one in mind, one in heart, and one in affections. And whatever sacrifices you may hereafter be required to make to preserve this mutual life, always make them generously. Sacrifice is usually difficult and irksome. Only love can make it easy, and perfect love can make it a joy. We are willing to give in proportion as we love. And when love is perfect, the sacrifice is complete. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And the Son so loved us that he gave himself for our salvation. Greater love than this no man hath, that a man lay down his life for his friends. No greater blessing can come to your married life than pure conjugal love, loyal and true to the end. May then this love with which you join your hands and hearts today never fail, but grow deeper and stronger as the years go on. And if true love and the unselfish spirit of perfect sacrifice guide your every action, you can expect the greatest measure of earthly happiness that may be allotted to man in this vale of tears. The rest is in the hands of God. Nor will God be wanting to your needs. He will pledge you the lifelong support of his graces in the holy sacrament, which you are now going to receive. What more romantic, what more generous ideal can there be for love than what we just heard? Love like this is truly an adventure. Love like this is the love that everyone wants to have. Everyone should have one way or another. And you could say, I think we all have to say, well, wow, okay, yeah, okay, this is really something. Okay, where George and Mary Bailey have this, okay, that's great, but I ain't George Bailey. She's not Mary Bailey. How can we possibly do this? We can't get it from ourselves alone. We got to get it from God. And the very difficulty of this high ideal, the very difficulty of this, great difficulty of this romantic ideal means we got to be thrown back on Christ to get the power that comes from outside of us to be able to do this. There's no atheists in foxholes, okay? In the foxhole of life, even of married life, we need God. I want to show you another little film that kind of illustrates this. This film is about a young couple who kind of down on their luck. They ended up buying a house that had, a lousy floor. Okay, the wife, pregnant, literally falls down, through a weakness in the floor. They don't have the money to fix it, so they got to call the old man. The dad's, the father-in-law, who was kind of a stonemason, fix-it guy, an immigrant from Italy, to come and fix it, and he kind of changes the whole thing around a little bit. We got to be full of life, and that's the name of this movie. How do we get to be full of life?
Hey, see you up again? Nothing now, sir. He was working till nearly 5 this morning. This fellow Samantha, what is saying, this fellow? Oh, it's my married 3 years, it's still. You take this table. This table isn't solid. All right. No. Electrons. Little things that whirl around very fast so that they seem to be standing still. Like an electric fan. Appearances are very deceiving. For instance, who am I? You, Nick's wife. Yes, but I'm more than Nick's wife. I'm my mother's daughter. I'm my Uncle John's niece. I'm American, I'm female, a consumer, a doctor would say I'm a patient. The Bureau of Internal Revenue would say I'm a dependent. I'm a lot of things, more than just a wife.
There's no word this man. I don't like him.
course he's good, because he tells me what I am, what I mean in the world.
You are a woman, a creator. He tells you that?
Not exactly.
You and me. How long are you married?
6 years.
Where are the children?
The children.
Yes, the children. I look around this big house upstairs, downstairs, in your rooms. Where are the children? My grandson is coming. But his brothers and sisters, where are they?
Papa, we had to wait. We couldn't afford it.
They cost nothing. They come free from God.
From God.
Yes, from God. Books all over the house. The kids like the books too. But I don't see no Bible. On the walls, you got the pretty pictures. But I don't see the cross of the Savior. You don't want him in your house? What is gonna tell my grandson? He's gonna say, where I come from, Mom. He's gonna say, what am I doing with it? He's gonna say, where am I going? You're gonna show him this book.
I don't know. I just don't know. But I think I'd like him to be like you.
And it's not like this, Mom.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Here you are, Papa. Uncle Mingo on the bandit. It turns out pretty funny.
Said it for my grandson.
What you gonna read it?
For what, kid? I was there. It's good.
What do you want for breakfast, honey?
It turned out pretty good.
Oh, fine. I'll read it later. Ham and eggs?
No, I'm not hungry.
Lamb chops?
No, nothing at all.
What's the matter?
Nothing, Your Highness. Just a mere trifle.
What does that mean?
Just this. You haven't better seen a line of my work in weeks.
Well, what of it?
You used to, every word.
Well, I've been busy. I don't have time.
Oh, you've been busy. I've been out there grinding away on that machine and you've been busy. Who ordered this?
I did.
What for?
For Papa.
Everything's scary except Cathy wanted Mrs. Rocco. Didn't tell me again. No, Cathy, what kind of place you got, boy? Thank you.
Now, you listen to me. I work very hard for my money. I've been given an advance on a book and I'm almost broke. I can't afford your liquor bill. I can't afford to waste my time worrying about your crazy relatives. You came down here to fix this hole in the floor, well fixed.
Don't you talk to your Papa like that.
Yeah, sure. All right, just a minute.
How do you do? I'm Father Mendoza.
How do you do, Father?
Won't you
Come in.
thank you? Oh, Father, come and stop in bedroom.
Buongiorno. Ah, sono questi i giorni dei quali mi ha parlato.
No, sì, certamente. Father, I wish you to meet my daughter-in-law, Miss Emily.
How do you do?
È stata per avere un bambino.
È evidente.
This fellow here is the boy.
Abbiamo già
Now,
avuto
wait a second, quick Sam. Che cosa ne direte, padre, di un bicchierino?
Perché no? Un bicchierino non qui. Si per peccare.
Ah, perché capite, no? Please, one moment.
Won't you sit down, Father? Are you from around this neighborhood?
Oh, yeah. St. Monica's Parish. Your next door neighbors go there. The Gregory? I didn't know they were Catholics. Maybe that's because you don't go to church. Well, I was born a Catholic, raised Catholic. I just stopped going.
See. And you, Mrs. Rocco?
Well, you see, I haven't been anything exactly.
Ecco mi padre, un buon bicchierino fa sempre bene, eh? A lei? Ah, cariamo, senti, cosa assolutamente. Tell me, Mr. Rocco, why don't you go to church anymore? I don't know. Lots of things. I've changed. My thinking has changed. The church never changed. Seems to me that should be one of its great attractions. The world has changed too, but I won't. Oh, we have atomic energy and hydrogen bomb. But mankind, the same.
What's the matter? You want that I like the dog and go to hell? Father, you talk to Miss Emily. She's not there. Come on, kid, come on.
Look, Father, why don't you mind your own business, huh? Maybe she doesn't want to talk to him. Oh, I mean, it's true, and she doesn't have to. Lord. Mrs. Rocco, I didn't come here to convert anyone. I came because your father-in-law... What are you talking about? Why don't you just leave it alone?
Honey, why don't you go fight outside? I do want to talk to Father.
Well, before you begin, Mrs. Rocco, I must explain that your father-in-law passed by the church yesterday. Rocco, what am I going to do with you, huh? I can tell you, Papa, I'm a married man. I'm not that 14-year-old kid you wanted to turn into a stonemason.
You're no good for fun, I don't care. You'll never make it.
Papa, I want to be what I am. Huh? Think my own thoughts, live my own life. Emily wants it that way, too.
Emily?
Maybe she doesn't want to go into church.
Why not?
Or maybe we like to plan our family.
Then planning to get going to baby.
Babies, sure babies, lots of babies, but I want them when I want them. Papa, there's no birth control in the church.
Birth control?
Well, we gotta draw the line someplace.
I don't like that kind of talk.
But... All right, suppose they come, huh? And I don't have the money.
Money?
Yeah.
What money? Me and Mama, we had 5, and now I enough money. But out of reading in them books.
Books? What books? I can't support too many, that's all.
Not my grandchildren. Understand? Leave it alone. They got as much right here as you.
Hey, kid. Hey, don't you?
I think you are very glad to see you.
Bye. Nice meeting you. Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you later, boys.
Papa?
Yeah?
I'd like to talk.
All right.
Sit down, Papa. I want you to try to understand what I'm going to tell you.
Excuse me. You want me to stay? Go? What?
Sit down.
Yes, ma'am.
Papa, I want you to try to understand what I'm going to say to you. It isn't easy to say. I can't become a Catholic just because you want me to. It wouldn't be fair to me or to the church. You asked me a question before. You said, you don't want God in your house? I do. I want God in my house and I want him for my child. But it took years to make me what I am today, whatever that is. And I can't change overnight.
You don't like the Pope?
Sure, I like the Pope. I don't mean that. I mean, people can't change so quickly. It's not the way you change the brand of cigarettes that you smoke. It's a big step. It takes time. It takes thinking out.
Not much time left. Pretty soon the baby comes, and you ain't married.
Oh, the marriage. Father and Doctor said that could be arranged.
Huh? Wedding in the church?
A quiet wedding in the rectory.
That's fine. Let's go.
Go, where?
You're gonna get married, right?
Well, that's up to my husband.
When, kid?
Now, wait a minute, honey. Marriage in the church is a sacrament. You have to be in a state of grace. I mean, I have to go to confession. Oh.
No. You better confess, kid. All the trouble you made for everybody. You better go.
Okay, this is, it goes on a little bit, but this is based on a true story. This sort of thing that we just saw. There's an Italian-American author who's dead now named John Fonte, and this is semi-autobiographical. They used to show this movie a lot. It's called Full of Life. It was made in the 50s. It was shown on Channel 9 quite a bit. And all of a sudden it got lost. Okay, it went somewhere into the dustbin. And I remembered the movie, and I actually wrote to Mrs. Fonte and they're like, what, to find out about it. And sure enough, I was able to get, now they have reissued it. You can find it. But I think the point of it is that we need God to be able to live this kind of ideal with all the difficulties and everything that are surrounded. We can't really do a superhuman thing like this just on our own. The best of us, the most talented of us, the Einsteins of the world are very, very limited. Einstein doesn't know everything, okay? As we've seen in the last year. A lot of very smart people don't know everything. And we need something more. Basically, this thing called love is what created the universe and us, and is why we are here. We're meant to live inside it. We're meant to be a part of it. And then it all fits together. This love starts explaining everything when we're ready to embrace it. When we convert from meism to living in Christ, to Christianity, all of a sudden we plug in to things that go way beyond us. It's a realization of what life is like when we love, when we're giving of ourselves. All of a sudden we realize the value of other people, that they have needs, that they have contributions, that we can help with that. We can join that. It's a realization of love when we give, not when we're just grabbing and looking out for number one. And what happens then? We become new men and new women. This is a whole new thing. There's a whole new way of life. It's no longer living in a barrel of barracudas, even though barracudas might be around us. We aren't the barracudas. We're opening ourselves up to something else entirely different. New men, new women, and a new world. One of the things I passed out to is this little piece from one verse from this Song of Songs. This is also called the Song of Solomon. It's a book of the Bible. It's a very short book. And a lot of people wonder, why is this there? Because the whole thing is a love story of a husband and a wife. And this one verse is pretty interesting, and I think it summarizes the whole thing. Many waters cannot quench love. Neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly scorned. Even all the money you can have is not equal to love. Like one of the things that we did a long time ago, I decided that I was going to try to live by love. And guess what? It's been that was a very long time ago, over half a century ago. And I don't regret it. It became something that is that makes an entirely different kind of life and a much better kind of life. Another thing I passed out here is this little thing from a book, a spiritual book called This Tremendous Lover, where this is actually a Trappist monk who wrote this. And he had a wonderful insight here about married love. There's a time in the life of some who are fortunate when the beauty of all creation is summed up for them in one person, all in each of those heart-touching charms of nature, have but one message for the fortunate lover who has learned that all things in the world are but things, and infinitely below the worth of persons, and that there is only one person who for him sums up the glory of all creation. These things will pass, and the foreshadow of their passing will sadden his heart. If he does not learn that all these, and even the one in whom they are all contained, are in turn the expression of the beauty of him who made them, and whose love they affirm and reflect. This love that we have for another person is meant not only to model the love of God, but to lead us to the love of God. And that's the greatest challenge and the greatest joy that can actually happen. It's not easy to do this because it does require sacrifice on our part, but it also brings a gigantic joy because of the gift of self we find ourselves. Where does this all summarize? It's summarized in the cross. It's on every altar and every sacrament, inserting Christ's way. Every time you go up to Mass, there's right there on the altar is a cross. Every time the priest is giving you some sacrament, he's wearing a mantle, a stole with a cross on it. He makes the sign of the cross when he's blessing us. It's this principle of sacrifice, Christ's way, that the Christian is called to be a part of, to live with it, to receive that cross and carry that cross and spread it to others. And with that cross also comes not just sacrifice, but a tremendous power. Because when it's no longer all about me, when it's all about what we can do, what I can do for the others, we end up having way more power and way more joy than we could have had before. Christ's cross saves and transforms everything. When he died on the cross, it looked like it was the end of the road for this little shindig, okay? They finished him off, okay? They decided that let's make sure that he's dead, okay? And they jabbed him with the spear to make sure that the last drop of blood was out of that heart. But that cross ended up transforming everything. It changed the world. He looked like a failure, but where it all ended was resurrection. All of a sudden, that sacrifice of Christ changed the whole world, gave a whole new type of life into the world. Life that not only lives forever, but it changes the world. The world has changed because Christ died on the cross. The world is different than it was, okay, at the time of, when they had gladiator fights, okay, and slavery and all this kind of stuff. Christianity, the impact of Jesus Christ, changes people on the inside if you really, truly live it and accept it. It changes the world. This kind of love is God's context for the birth of new life. He wanted new life to be born and conceived in an atmosphere of absolute love, where the two people are, that's the idea, where people are giving to each other. That's how he wanted children to be born. And when you think about it, okay, the marital embrace is a beautiful and wonderful way for conception to take place, for new life to take place in the context of two people who said, I'm all yours, we belong to each other, and we're not giving up, and we're here. We're not only into each other, we're into love itself. New life is inside each one of us too. We can have it if we get it from God. And if we take that, the words come true, what is said, what used to be said in this exhortation. If true love and the unselfish spirit of perfect sacrifice guide your every action, you can expect the greatest measure of earthly happiness that may be allotted to man in this vale of tears. Joy comes about not from just self-aggrandizement, but from self-forgetfulness. Joy comes about from the sacrifice, united to that perfect sacrifice that set the planets and the galaxies of the universe. That's capable for us by being children of God. It's not only a great adventure, it's a great blessing. And it's available, and you're beginning to live it now. Now, next week, it'll be the last session. We'll have two parts to this, okay? And also a little bit of a third part between the two parts, okay? The two parts of it are, one, my wife and I will both be up here, and we'll talk about how two totally incompatible people can be happily married for almost 45 years. It'll be our 45th anniversary coming up in May, if we live that long. The second part will be talking about marriage and the Eucharist and the wedding Mass itself. Not only the wedding Mass, but how the Mass can be an important part of enriching your marriage. So we'll talk about that. And in between the two, we're going to have a little test, okay? It's a little test that you can't study for, so don't even worry about it. But if you've been listening, okay, you'll know what to do. And I think you'll find it interesting and touching and enjoyable, but it'll be something that you can all participate in if you're here. So next week, Pat and I will be here, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Eucharist and marriage. And so until that time, have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.